Have you ever gone to a networking event, looked around the room, and thought, what are all these strangers talking about? I know from my decades of networking that there's a basic networking conversation that works in almost any setting to help break the ice and get conversation flowing. In this video, I'm going to break down that script for you line by line. We'll start with common icebreakers, move on to follow-up questions, and end with how to close a conversation after about 5 minutes or so. By the end of this video, you will feel confident and grounded in any networking conversation, not anxious and sweaty. Please do subscribe, like, and comment. It's such a great signal to me that you're finding value in this content. As we go through this conversational script, I want you to be listening closely because there's one thing all of these lines have in common. See if you can guess it, and at the end, we'll talk about what that is. Let's dive into this standard networking conversation script with opening lines. My favorite opening line is so safe, so simple that you don't even need to introduce yourself before you say it. You don't even need to say hi before you deliver this opening line. You can use this line with a weak half smile and you'll still be having a great conversation just a few minutes later. My favorite opening line is, what brought you to this event today? This question is perfect because it's not personal. And that means when you ask this to the other person, they're not going to put their guard up. That's exactly what you want out of an opening line. You want to reassure the person you're talking to that you're a safe space for them to connect. Now, here's a key thing to remember both with this opening line, generally throughout the conversation. There's a back and forth volley that happens in these conversations. You ask a question, they answer, and then you have two options as to what to do next. You can either reply to their answer with a follow-up question based on that answer, or you can answer the question that you just asked. It might be simpler than I made it sound, so let's go through an example. Let's say you ask me, what brought me to the event today? I might answer something like, oh, I went last year and I really enjoyed it, so I made time for it again today. You have two options here. First, you might want to know why I really enjoyed it last year. You could ask a follow-up question, but you don't have to do that, and it could be that the other person didn't give you much to work with in their answer. In that case, you can still keep the conversation going by answering your own question. So, returning to the example, let's say I said, yeah, I went to this event last year and really enjoyed it, so I made time for it again. You could say, oh yeah, I made time for this event because I'm really interested in the first speaker. Now you've given me something to reply to. Maybe I can tell you, oh, I've actually heard them speak before, they're really great, and we can keep the conversation going. Even though I just neurotically broke down this conversational volley, in practice, it's going to feel very natural once you get the hang of it. And you're going to realize that when you keep this framework in mind, you always have a place to go within the conversation and you won't feel cornered. Let's talk about follow-up questions. The nice thing about this icebreaker is there are several really natural follow-ups related to that icebreaker. Some of my favorites include, have you been to this event before? How did you find out about this event? And how do you know event organizer or speaker? Unless the event itself is absolutely fascinating, you probably won't use all of these follow-up questions after that opening line. However, I find using one of them helps to further warm up the conversation before you get to the mother of all follow-up questions, the question that you can't go to a Washington, D.C. networking event without someone asking you. It is, what do you do? This question gets a lot of flack, and I can understand why. Sometimes it can feel like people want to ask you what you do so that they can rank you in their head and determine if you're worth talking to. But the truth is, you're at a networking event. It's kind of okay to be curious about what other people do, and it's okay for them to also wonder what you do. After all, if you're watching a video like this, you're probably interested in networking so that you can perhaps find a job or a mentor or learn more about a career path. In all of these situations, it's going to be important to know what the person you're talking to does for a living. Asking this question also gives you the chance to answer it yourself. Keep in mind that conversational volley that we talked about earlier. When you ask a question, you set the table so that you can answer it yourself, even if the other person doesn't immediately ask you that same question back. If you have no job experience and you're wondering how to answer this question, then you can watch a video that I made that gives you an exact script for doing just that. Just as with that opening line, the what do you do question has several baked-in follow-up questions. Some common ones include, how long have you been with that employer, or how long have you been in the industry? I will say that after one or two follow-up questions in the area of what do you do, the conversation tends to stall. If that happens to you, my advice is to periscope out and switch the area of focus in the conversation. You've been talking about the event, you've been talking about the person's job. Now is a good time to talk about the industry at large. A great question might be, what changes in industry are you tracking closely right now? The answer is AI. It's always AI. But if that's true and you know that, go ahead and look up some articles or podcasts about how AI is changing your industry before the event. This will give you a lot of cool material to work with when the conversation goes towards that topic. By the way, if you enjoy having specific language in your pocket that you can bring to events, you might be interested in downloading my PDF, 50 Conversation Starters. It's free and you can get it by subscribing to my mailing list. You'll find a link below with way more information. It's natural after 5 to 10 minutes of even a good conversation to get the sense that someone else might want to peel off. You're at a networking event. You probably want to talk to more than one person too. This is when I love to deploy a smooth closing line. And I'm going to give you not one, but 2 closing lines to use. The first is, can you recommend any industry thought leaders to follow on social media? And the second is, can you recommend any industry newsletters to stay up to date? After you ask these questions, take out your phone and write down the other person's recommendation. These closing lines are triple threats because first, you get a great recommendation. Second, the other person feels valued and listened to because you just wrote down their recommendation. And third, you have something awesome to follow up with when you reach out to that person after the event and say, hey, it was great to connect. You're not going to say, hey, it was great to connect. You're going to mention how cool this resource was, and that's going to help you continue the conversation if you want to. Also, bonus, it's entirely possible that after this person gives you a recommendation, you have something to say about it, and the conversation continues in a really fun direction. In the beginning of this video, I told you to pay close attention to all these lines of the standard networking script because there was something they all had in common. Did you catch it? All of these lines were questions. The way to have a supernatural, easy networking conversation is to stay curious and open. And rest assured that when you do that, you'll still give yourself opportunities to talk about yourself and how awesome and employable and interesting you are. That's because, as we mentioned with the conversational volley, every time you ask a question and the other person answers it, you give some space in the conversation for yourself to answer your own question and brag a little. I hope this video helped. Now get out there and meet someone new today.